Our top focus on World DNA this morning. Donald Trump has unveiled a raft of punishing tariffs ranging from a minimum of 10% to as high as 49%, targeting countries across the globe.
Well, the US president said he will impose a 10% universal tariff on all imported goods being imported into the US, and these are in addition to the reciprocal tariffs on a few dozen countries. Now, speaking in the White House Rose Garden, Trump unveiled these tariffs on what he called Liberation Day, calling the tariffs a declaration of economic independence.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
Now, the 10% universal tariff will go into effect on the 5th of April, while the reciprocal tariffs will begin on the 9th of April. These tariffs will take effect some of the closest trading partners of the US.
You see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate.
Trump claimed the US has been looted, pillaged, raped and plundered by nations near and far. And Trump claimed that he was very kind and so was only imposing half the amount that those countries taxed US exports.
But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the...
Now, in the middle of his hour-long speech, the president displayed a chart that showed the unfair fee that countries placed on the US, alongside the new USA discounted reciprocal tariffs. Trump reserved some of the heaviest blows for what he called the nations that threaten the US badly.
This included 34% on goods from China, 20% on the European Union and 24% on Japan. Some of the worst hit trading partners were in Asia, including 49% for Cambodia, 47% for Vietnam, 44% for Myanmar, which was recently hit by a devastating earthquake. And Trump said he would impose a baseline tariff of 10% for the rest, including Britain.
If you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
Now, speaking about India, President Trump described tariffs by New Delhi as very, very tough, adding, as India charges US 52%, so we will charge them half of that, 26%.
Trump has telegraphed the move for weeks, insisting tariffs will keep the United States from being ripped off by other countries and spur a new golden age for the American economy. But many experts warn that the tariffs risk triggering a recession at home for the US and a damaging trade war abroad.
All right, to discuss more on this, we're now being joined by Raymond E. Vickery from Washington, D.C. He is a former U.S. Assistant Secretary for Commerce for Trade Development and Senior Associate at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you. Let me get right into this. Of course, we've seen even in the run-up to this announcement that there were jitters in the market. Economists were nervous as well. Do you think these reciprocal tariffs that have now been unveiled will actually lead to the trade war and the trade meltdown that everyone has been dreading, in fact?
Well, thanks very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on World is One Network. WION has a particular place to play in bringing the world together. Unfortunately, what President Trump has done today is exactly the opposite. After World War II, we put together international institutions all the way from the UN to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which later became the WTO, so that we would have a mechanism whereby the world would operate with consensus, would operate on a most favored nation basis to build peace and prosperity around the world. But what has happened today is taking an axe to the root of these international institutions. They're gone in favor of bilateral negotiations, which are suitable to President Trump's former profession of real estate, but not suited to building peace and prosperity in the world. If you take India-U.S. relations, we had an opening in the early 90s when I was in government, which allowed us to overcome decades of estrangement. And we did that through economic engagement and through being able to treat each other not just on a transactional basis, but on a relationship basis, building on values, on common strategic purposes, and using economics to buttress that. That's all gone out the window with this approach. I think that the trade war is on in earnest. You heard our Secretary of the Treasury saying, well, you shouldn't retaliate. You should just stand still. Well, people are going to do that around the world. Already, there are those who think, listen, our sovereignty is being damaged by this. I think that this approach is entirely unworkable. The idea that somehow India has a 52% tariff plus the tariff barriers and currency manipulation is entirely made up. There is no understandable basis for coming up with that figure other than raw estimates. And so therefore you say it's 52%. Well, that's way too high. Oh, so we'll cut it in half. That means that there will be many hundreds of percent increases in regard to goods that go to the United States. And make no mistake about it, it's the American consumer who's going to pay these taxes. It is not the foreign exporters. So we're in for a period of inflation here. This is sort of an alternative reality to me in terms of economics, in terms of what we want to build around the world.
Allow me to come in there, sir. You mentioned that the American consumer is also going to be affected by this. That's essentially what I wanted to come to next. You've given us an understanding of the global perspective here and the impact, but domestically for the U.S., what kind of impact will it have essentially for the U.S. consumer? Will it lead to job losses? If you can elaborate on that.
Well, I think it will. Of course, it is touted as this great job builder. Well, we don't have a problem building jobs in the United States. In fact, we're looking for workers and people are flocking from around the world to try to fill the needs which are here. But what is going to happen is you're trying to build a fortress America economically as well as in terms of security. And that goes contrary to what has been proven ever since World War II, that expanding markets provide a tide which lifts all boats. President Trump is trying to create a reality that we are very poor over here, that we are somehow being taken advantage of by every foreigner in the world. Now, there will be some advantage, of course, to favored sectors. The 25% across the board on automobiles, obviously, and he showed it today in the Rose Garden appearance, will have some favor in terms of auto workers. But they're a small percentage of overall workers in the United States. And it's going to hurt people who are importing parts, who are importing raw material, who need those in order to be able to do manufacturing here. So yes, this is an alternative reality to me, and I don't think it works. I don't even think that he believes it works. I think what he thinks is that now people are going to come in, kiss the hem of his garment, and enter into a trade arrangement, India and others, which will be much more favorable to the United States. I doubt that's going to happen across the board.
Mr. Vikri, now just coming back to a point that you'd made earlier as well, and this is something that we've been discussing as well. You said that, of course, that relations are made on shared values, and all of that seems to be out of the window. We also heard the US government said that let this sink in, do not retaliate right now, but as you mentioned, that isn't going to happen. Just on that note, I wanted to understand, what is your assessment of how emerging countries will cope with these tariffs? Because some of them face the highest reciprocal tariffs, of course.
Well, I think it's going to be variation. Let's face it, Prime Minister Modi has been able to play Donald Trump and his ego very well. And so some will say, look, we'll flatter the man himself, and we'll keep our heads down. We'll do some things that'll enable him to claim victory, and therefore he won't bother us as much as he will people who want to be able to stand up and say, look, we're a sovereign nation. We have to make our own decisions. So it's going to be a variation, but make no mistake about it that the bottom line overall is that it is going to decrease international trade. It's going to decrease the access to markets and the allocation of goods and services. So I don't think that you're going to have a positive impact overall anywhere, but there will be those who try to keep out of the line of fire.
That was Raymond Vikri joining us from Washington, D.C. Always a pleasure speaking with you, Mr. Vikri. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure with you. Thanks so much.
All right. The early reactions to U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs suggest an escalation in trade wars and global trade disruptions.
Listen into what the general masses from U.S. have to say on this.
It'll be affected big. You see it in the market. You see the groceries are going up. The farmers are catching it. He come and flip the whole system around.
I mean, I think everybody's already seen the effect of tariff, especially like if you have any money in the stock market, you've lost some money. I think everybody's anticipating prices going up, and it's kind of the last thing we need right now because we're already dealing with inflation, and if the economy slows down and we're dealing with inflation, it's like that's going to be it's going to be a mess, man.
Yeah, I mean, every day you go to the store, things are more expensive, and not just food, but things when you look across the board, childcare, summer camps, it's just one thing after another where the prices are constantly going up. And what makes it most interesting to me, I didn't vote for him, but he ran on the platform of lowering prices, and I feel like we, as people who weren't in favor of his platform and what they were running for, watched other people get duped, and now we're all paying the price for it. And it's like, are we going to have 4 years of just prices continuing to go up?
I mean, I think everybody's already seen the effect of tariff, especially like if you have any money in the stock market, you've lost some money. I think everybody's anticipating prices going up, and it's kind of the last thing we need right now because we're already dealing with inflation, and if the economy slows down and we're dealing with inflation, it's like that's going to be it's going to be a mess, man.